Hello everybody, and welcome back to the building of this David Boddington cirrus moth. In the last session I worked on the upper wings, which are now completed, and the purpose of this video is to have a closer look at the construction and the joining together of the components to make the lower wing. As you can see, this is a key part, the middle section. It has one servo mounted in the centre. That's not an approach I'm going to actually use. I'm going to mount separate servos for each aileron. There will be an opening here to allow the servo leads to come through into the fuselage. I've already made this because there was nothing of massive interest in putting it together apart from perhaps positioning the dowels at the front. And I'm just going to show you my approach for doing that and making sure that they line up. You can't assume that that is the right location for them. And the reason I'm saying that is once bitten, twice shy. It's happened to me in the past. So I'm going to show you my approach to doing this, to making sure that they're all lined up correctly. Just pause it while we get the fuselage in position to demonstrate that. So hopefully you can see there are two holes in this former, this bulkhead, that receives the dowels which lock the lower section in place. My approach to doing this was actually to push the dowels in. These dowels, if you look very closely, I hope you can see there's a pencil line on the end. So I pushed each dowel in so that they simply stuck out of the holes that are in here. And then I offered up this section into position. Now obviously it wouldn't go in properly because of the dowels, but by placing it in at the back and pushing down, I was able to get an impression of where the dowels sat into the leading edge. And then I was able to file them out until this section could go in without knocking the dowels out of position or putting pressure on them. And by trial and error, I was able to see actually that the dowels needed to be about a 1/16 off this rib. Now on the plans they're actually shown touching the rib. So if I'd gone ahead and lined them up in the position shown on the plans, they wouldn't have matched up with the holes in the bulkheads. And I've seen lots of models, some that have come my way, where those holes have been fettled out and opened out because they don't match. This way, they're guaranteed to match. So I simply tacked them with a little bit of super glue. Once I'd got the lower wing section fitting into the fuselage cutout, I just tack glued them just enough to hold them in position, and then I could lift it up and slide the whole thing out together and it stayed in place. I was then able to turn it over, pack it both sides, tack it with CA glue with some scrap balsa, and what I will do is I'll smear all of this in epoxy resin because this is going to hold the wing in place, remember. Once completed, this section can be sheeted, so I'd left that out deliberately so I could get into it easily. That's now a strong anchoring point for the middle section, and it's accurate, and I haven't had to cut out or make these holes bigger or mess around with them. Put it back in place. You can hear it's a decent fit, I hope. Drop the undercarriage in, and that pops into the groove, cut into this hardwood block. Well, it's actually a plywood block. And there'll be a couple of clamps that go over that to hold it in place. In the field, in practicality, you undo one of them and you only have 2 screws to put in there. The next task I have to do is to locate the 2 holes for the wing retaining bolts, the plastic wing retaining bolts. And the way to do this is as follows. Slight pause while I rejig things around so you can see them. As you can see, I've flipped things over and the cockpit is still fully open, so I've got good access to these T-nuts, which obviously are going to be used to retain the lower wings. And it's now simply a matter of pushing through with a sharp implement, which I can't do and hold the camera at the same time, so I'll have to do that off camera. Simply push through the hole, or I could use a drill that's just a neat fit through these T-nuts, which is probably a better option. Mark off on the underside of, on the upper side rather, of the trailing edge, drill them through, and then the bolts can go under, go from underneath. So there we go. I'll do that, and then we'll come back and hopefully I can demonstrate everything lining up. Here we go then. Marked through and drilled. Here's the test. Add the lower wing section in. As I say, that would be clamped in. Holes drilled. Now these nylon bolts are excessively long, so they'll need to be trimmed. Do they hit? Well, that's going into the T-nut. So is that. As you can see, they're way too long, but that's a perfectly aligned middle section now, with no need to hack out holes and readjust. Now that would be a weak point over time. It would just simply crush the balsa. So what I've made are a couple of brass tubes with a washer soldered on the end. They'll need to be cut to length, and they'll go inside. Holes will need to be opened out slightly inside, and then that'll give something for the nylon bolts to bite onto. So there we go. The last little bit is actually to jig up and put together the wings with the correct dihedral, and somebody asked on the last video, they weren't quite clear how I'd gone about that. So off camera, Blue Peter style. For those of you who aren't from the UK, Blue Peter was an iconic children's show, and the poor presenters would be given a DIY toy project using household items, and they'd have to construct it, and it was obvious they struggled doing it, so they would often reach under the table, and the classic line was, "Here's one I've prepared earlier." So what I'm going to do is, off camera, I'll prepare all the dihedral bracing. If I just lift this up, all the dihedral bracing, which is exactly the same as on this one, but when it actually comes to jigging it up and setting it up, I hope I'll be a little clearer than I obviously was in the last video, for that viewer who made the comment they weren't quite sure. So I'll go through that very briefly at the end. No need to go through the hacking out part. The video will be long enough. But there we go. That's how I've lined up the bolt holes and the dowels, and I can go ahead now and sheet this middle section so that that's now completed, ready to slot out for the to accept the dihedral braces. Here we go then. We're all ready now to actually set up this left-hand panel of the lower wing. The middle section, the dihedral bracing has been added in. I've made one modification to this section. It called for sheeting only up to the upper spar. I'm going to sheet the whole of this section altogether. I think it's better in terms of wear and tear as the wings bolted on and taken off the fuselage. So this will be all sheeted in with an aperture here to allow for the servo cables to come through. So that's prepped and ready. I've removed the material in the end of the ribs, and the ribs through here is a little bit more awkward using a razor saw. This end root rib has been set to 2 degrees. I think this one's been set incorrectly actually, but it's not the end of the world. It's not a deal breaker, because the main issue, or the main thing that's going to set the dihedral, or is the actual angle in the dihedral brace themselves. Now these have been really cut rather well using the laser cutter, and they seem to be very accurate. I've checked them. So as long as this is lined up with the bottom of the spar, then we're not going to be a million miles out on the dihedral angle that we need. So that's the centre section. That will be weighed down with this sandbag. The issue is, quite often with kits, it'll say whichever amount the tips need to be blocked up by. In this case, it's 20 millimeters, and I've made a block to that effect. And it'll say at the wing tip. So there's the issue. Which part of the wing tip? Now, I don't think you can take it from here, because at what point is it there, or is it there? It has to be, in my view, either the leading edge or the trailing edge, because they're fixed. And that's what I've done for the upper wing, and it's what I'm going to do for this one. And it seemed to match the dihedral angle on the brace itself. So the process is fairly straightforward. It involves putting some glue on. It's probably easier to apply it first of all to, helps if you open it, first of all to the brace itself. I'm using this white glue, which, if I can get it to come out, in my view it's a really strong glue. So I'll apply glue there and the glue there, and then once it's all set up, I'll apply glue to the individual rib points. I'll also apply some glue to the end rib, but I'm going to concentrate mainly in the centre. I'll use CA to pull the upper edge and the lower edge of the ribs together. And let's get this jigged up. Something I'm going to do, which I forgot to get handy, is I'm going to actually put some cling film down on the board so that we don't end up, there will be some glue which will ooze out, and I don't want this to be glued to the board, which it would be. So that the angle there, look, it's matching up to the spar, and likewise with this one. So I'm happy with that. These can pull in. I can do that afterwards. So I'll just pause in a second. I'll get some cling film to weigh this down. There you have it. I've got some cling film handy. Let's weigh this down. So that's nice and flat. Happy with that. And as a check, double checking I'm putting it in the right way. I think I am. Well, that's very reassuring. It's not pushing the wing up. The block's going underneath. I'm not having to force it up, or the wing's not floating in mid-air. So that angle appears to be absolutely spot on. I'll put a clamp in here to hold that in place, and then I'll clamp across here. It's going to crush the leading edge a little bit weird, but I'm not worried about that because it hasn't been sanded yet. So any damage to that's not a big issue. It's going to be damaged even more when I sand it. And I'll apply some glue around here, double checking that. Happy with that. And that's the process. I thought I'd gone over it in the last video, but clearly not. I hope that's clear. To stop everything moving about, I'll put a pin in at that point, because I know that at that point it's touching the bottom. There we go. We've nearly got a biplane. We've got 3/4 of a biplane. I hope you've enjoyed that little journey. If you have, please give the video a thumbs up. If not, don't worry about it. It's all there. You either enjoy it or you don't enjoy it. The weather is horrendous at the moment. It's lashing it down again. But I managed to get flying yesterday. Took the big Falcon out and went to an old strip I used to fly at with my pal Jeff. We had a great day. So, you know, if you're not flying, you can enjoy doing some building. Get creative, get flying, enjoy the whole hobby. Thanks for watching now.